of us, the program. And next month is Cherry Cox. Cherry is also local, but lives on the far east side of Portland, and she has an unbelievably fragile set of carving that she's mastered, and I would call it deep relief pierced carving. And so she, on the second Tuesday in November, she'll be the speaker.
Oh, that'll be a good one.
For that, I'll point out, if you're interested in caricature carving, that Terry Moss has a class at the end of this month, 2 days, 9 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday, the last weekend in October. He does a quarterly caricature carving class for us. And he has a whole series of figures that he changes every quarter based on a 2 by 2 by 12-inch piece of basswood. And this time it's a fall-themed pilgrim and a Native American, your choice, or do both, or attempt to do both in the 2 days. We have the Carving SIG is a small group that meets 3 different times during the month. Once during the day at Rockler, which happens to be tomorrow, but normally it's on the first Wednesday of every month. But I had to be out of town, so tomorrow it's it. And it's on the third Thursday evening in Multnomah Village at the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers studio. And then equivalently, we have an East Side gathering that Tom Rich coordinates called the East Side Carving Gathering that meets on the first Saturday from 10 to 1 on 31st and Northeast Sandy. So depending on your own work schedule or life schedule, you should be able to plug into one of those groups. We're focusing on whittling for this quarter, September, October, November, focusing on ornaments and other projects. Tomorrow, Nancy Gerard will be there, and we'll focus either on a feather or an ornament or another project, but that's the option. And then between her and Tom Rich, for the October and November meetings, we will continue that. So that's the end of my announcement. Cottonwood bark is one of those things that people sometimes carve a lot and sometimes they've never carved at all. And so this is if you will, an orientation to carving cottonwood bark. And if we're lucky, we'll have a bit of a dialogue if you have your own experience. My mentor when I learned carving about 6 years ago was Jeff Harness, and he did a lot of cottonwood bark carving and did a lecture for us about 4 years ago as part of an orientation. But I stumbled on Betty, who had volunteered to demonstrate for us at Multnomah Days, and she was carving cottonwood bark. I asked her if she would share her experience, and she said, for sure. She said, I'm an expert, not really, but she said, I got enough experience that I can share, and I'll share what I don't know a lot, but I'll probably learn a lot. So we'll have a set of slides for that. Betty, I first knew of Betty as a woodturner, and so she's an expert woodturner. And by the way, she also carves, which is not unusual for people in the woodworking domain. Because of the 4 clubs we have 2 turning clubs in the area that are East Side, West Side. And Roger Crooks, that's here on my right, is the former president and running for president for the upcoming Northwest Woodturners. And then we have the Guild of Oregon Woodworkers, which is, I consider them a big general purpose woodworking club, a lot of furniture. And then we have the Carving Guild, which is us. Yeah. And carving happens everywhere. So we're trying to organize the diversity of the carving and look at various materials, looking at the common issues that face us, look at design issues and styles. So tonight is it's a bit about, obviously about material, but it's also about design. So we'll switch to Betty's voice.
I'm Betty Simneth. I've been carving and doing woodworking for probably most of my life. I got started as a kid into woodworking, and it's developed, and I've really embraced the passion once I retired, and I have time to do all of this stuff. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about carving cottonwood bark. I got into cottonwood bark mainly after seeing some of the pieces that I was looking at on YouTube and on, seeing different pictures of it, and I was really interested in it and got a hold of some and started working with it and just really, really enjoy it. There's some idiosyncrasies about cottonwood that you probably need to know as you get started in it, but when talking about me, I'm a self-taught carver. I've been to a couple of classes. I plan to attend a few more so that I can develop a few more skills, but I've done pretty well on my own. I've made my mistakes, and I've learned what to carve and what not to try to carve. Cottonwood bark is one of those things that you can carve intricate work, or you can do rough work. A lot of people do, I'm looking at this camera that I can see myself and not looking at you guys. Yeah, but you can do a lot of intricate work with it, or you can do rough work with it. There's so many very, very good cottonwood bark carvers out there that can do really, really fine faces. And I have a real issue with doing faces. I just cannot get the symmetry right for some reason, and I struggle with it. So I'm learning to try to embrace doing faces again. I've got a couple of different things I'm going to show you tonight, but first I want to tell you a little bit about cottonwood bark. There's we can show in one of the slides, on the very beginning slides, we'll talk about the material. There's different types of cottonwood bark. There's
Want to show the examples first?
yeah, show the examples on there, Larry. Now this is some of the stuff that I've done. On the left-hand side of your screen is the finished piece, and that's actually 3 pieces of cottonwood bark that I joined together with dowels to make up this caricature. It was a commissioned piece for a tattoo artist here in town, and so I made it as intricate as I could, and she was really interested in the gnome homes that I was building, so I carved this for her, and we've got some detail pictures of it. This is some of the detail work that I did that you can see a little closer. So you can see where you can get really intricate with your carving, and you can add to it, and you can make things really neat on it. I'd added the foliage that you see in the back is actually lighted, so it can be seen. It lights up, and I put little caricatures in the gnomes in the carving itself. This is a little piece I was going to bring with me tonight. It's still hanging in the bathroom at home because someone won't let me sell that one or leave at the house with it, so I think it was purposely forgotten. But this is a little short one. This is only about 10 inches tall, and so I put a few little gnomes on it and a flower pot and things like that. But you can get as creative as you want with these things. This is one of my first carvings on cottonwood, and I took a really tall piece and mounted it to a piece of burl that I had that I actually cut in half and made another piece that I didn't add in the pictures, but it was a different type of piece. But this one here is very tall, and it was my first adventure into doing the bark. And this is some of the detail on the top of that carving. I put columns in, and inside that column part is an actual door that I carved in, and that was some of the harder parts of getting it in there. So you can see that you can add shingles or you can add bricks anywhere you want to, and you can just let your imagination go with it. This is a piece that I did for our dog groomer as a gift. Her husband commissioned me to do this. And so what I did was I concentrated on things that she liked and everything dogs. So you'll see little pictures of, you'll see little characters of dogs in here that I made. And is this the little video?
If you click it again, the video will go.
Okay, so this is a little video of that finished piece. And
About how tall is it?
that one turned out to be almost 21, 22 inches tall. So it's a tall one. And I put different little species of dogs in each one of those little holes. And she was over the moon thrilled with it. And she loves stained glass, so I put a stained glass window in there on the bottom. And then she loves peacocks, so she got a peacock carving. And then I did actually do a face carving on the side of that one. I don't know if I got a picture of it or not. But I attempted a face carving. Let's see if I zoomed in on the picture. I may not have. That's how embarrassed I am. Okay, let's see what's next. So there's a little more detail of the top of that dogwood. And there you can see the stained glass a little better on that. So this here is that very first carving that I showed you with the intricate carving, and this was the beginning of that carving. This was the rough out. So that's kind of where I started after I got everything all put together the way I wanted it, and then I started working on some of the detail and roughing out some of the areas that I wanted to carve.
How many pieces of bark and about how big?
That's actually about 3 pieces. There may be 4 pieces of bark in there, I'm not sure. As I was planning it, I had drawn a rough picture of it before I started, and I was kind of planning where I wanted things. And as you get into carving, and I'll show you some of the intricacies when I start doing some carving for you, you can kind of decide where you want to remove bark so that you get down to actually stuff that you can carve on. You're going to remove a lot of outside bark, and I'm going to demonstrate that to you here in a little bit. So this is another close-up. On the picture on the right, I actually took apart a pine cone, and I used all of the pine cone pieces as the roofing shingles on that little roof. So I put things from nature in a lot of my carvings. So this shows that piece as I was getting ready to rough it out. And as you can see, I've got it clamped to a board, and that side piece where my mallet is sitting still needs to be roughed out, and that gets roughed out. And that's the first thing that I'm going to show you on the demonstration. And this is some more of the roughing out and planning stages, and this is kind of a lateral view, but you can see that you kind of have to do a little bit of planning as you're going along, and areas where you don't know what's going to go there yet, you know, your imagination can go in any direction you take it. And so I started working from the top down, and I got the roofing done and started with some of the shingles and stuff on the side. And this is another view of the rough out. So my experience with cottonwood bark has been that it's an easy thing to carve. I mean, the cottonwood bark itself is just a little bit not quite as hard as basswood, not quite as soft as basswood.
Hey Betty,
Yes.
we got a question that says, did you start with a pattern or was it freehand?
I kind of drew a rough sketch, but I didn't draw the detail in. That most of that was all freehand. So when I got to an area where I wanted to put doors or windows, I was able to put doors and windows in those areas. And a lot of it comes from just looking at the piece and what do I want to put there. Do I want a place for a character? Do I want doors and windows? Do I want a wall or rocks or whatever? And I'm going to show you examples of all of that as we go along. Oh, let me go back to this. There's different species of cottonwood bark. Eastern, black, North American, and Canadian. Most of the Canadian is what I carve, and it's because I bought it from a Canadian dealer. I don't know that I have any black, or I have carved any black cottonwood bark, but most of the stuff that I carve is from North America or Canada. The one thing about cottonwood bark that you have to remember is that it's soft, it's lightweight, it's easy to work with. The Janka hardness, I don't know if you all know what the Janka hardness is, but it's slightly harder than basswood, but you can still use simple carving tools. A lot of people say, they use some of their older tools because when you're stripping the bark, it can be kind of rough on your tools and you can nick tools fairly easily. But they sharpen up easily and you can get the nicks out and you don't have any problems. But you can I use flex carve, are they called?
Flex cut.
Flex cut tools mainly. I have some others, but I use the flex tools, and I sometimes use the power carving, and I'm going to show you an example of where I would use that.
Another question came in, is what type do we have in the Northwest?
Right now we can get Eastern cottonwood bark and we can get Canadian cottonwood bark fairly easily.
And Larry, what kind of cottonwood bark did Tom Rich distribute at the annual picnic?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
So there are advantages to it. It is a softer wood, and it's not very durable. So when you finish it, it's good to put a nice hardened finish on it because as time goes on, it will darken. And to keep the details crisp and to keep the cottonwood from darkening too much, it needs to be in kind of a dry atmosphere that protects it and protects it from damage. So the thing about cottonwood bark is a lot of times it will chip off. So you want to kind of protect it, and if you have a piece that you've worked on, and like that big piece that I did for the tattoo artist, she, I think, had planned to put that in a plexiglass case to protect it. But I'm not sure exactly how she finished it. But some of them, if you do one as big as that one, you're going to want to protect the finish, and you're going to want to protect the bark. So factors.
The question came in is what kind of finish do you use?
I use beeswax, or I use varathane spray. I'll use a durable varathane, and I'll spray it with that. You have to consider certain things. They sharpen up easily, and you can get the nicks out, and you don't have any problems. But you can I use flex carve, are they called?
Flex cut.
Flex cut tools mainly. I have some others, but I use the flex tools, and I sometimes use the power carving, and I'm going to show you an example of where I would use that.
So another question came in, is what type do we have in the Northwest?
Right now, we can get Eastern cottonwood bark, and we can get Canadian cottonwood bark fairly easily.
And Larry, what kind of cottonwood bark did Tom Rich distribute at the annual picnic?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
So there are advantages to it. It is a softer wood, and it's not very durable. So when you finish it, it's good to put a nice hardened finish on it, because as time goes on, it will darken. And to keep the details crisp, and to keep the cottonwood from darkening too much, it needs to be in kind of a dry atmosphere that protects it and protects it from damage. So the thing about cottonwood bark is a lot of times it will chip off. So you want to kind of protect it, and if you have a piece that you've worked on, and like that big piece that I did for the tattoo artist, she, I think, had planned to put that in a plexiglass case to protect it. But I'm not sure exactly how she finished it. But some of them, if you do one as big as that one, you're going to want to protect the finish, and you're going to want to protect the bark. So factors.
The question came in, is what kind of finish do you use?
I use beeswax, or I use varathane spray. I'll use a durable varathane, and I'll spray it with that. You have to consider certain things. If it's going to be exposed to if it's going to be sitting in bright sunlight, you want to really put a durable finish on it so that it doesn't fade over time and doesn't darken the wood.
And then do you worry about insects?
Not necessarily. The insects, as far as insects being in the wood that I'm carving, I haven't found any. The only insects that I have found are ones that we have mason bees around our house. And every now and then I'll go in and start carving something, and I've been working on it, and maybe find a little row of mason bees have worked their way into my carving, and I have to extricate them and evict them. But I won't tell anybody about that. She's listening. So factors to consider when you're doing cottonwood bark is the thickness of the bark, and how it looks on the, how is it going to work for what you want to carve. Because you can get a really thin piece and not be able to carve anything real deeply in it, but you can get a larger piece, which I'm going to show you that I'm working on an owl that I wanted a deeper piece so that I can get some three-dimensional effects on that owl. So you look at your bark and kind of choose what you're going to, if you're going to do a face, or you're going to do an animal or something like that, then you're going to want one of those, a thicker piece of bark. And I'll show you that, and let's see. Can they see me right now, or they just hear me?
You can now.
This is that thicker piece of bark I'm talking about. So I'm wanting to get depth into this owl, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. This is where I'm going to use power carving, is because to get that depth, I would be hours and hours trying to dig that out with hand tools. So I get in there with the power tools, and I can get that roughed out fairly quickly so that I can work on the detail work. And I'll show you a little bit of that when we get to the power carving part. But there's there's other pieces that you can get, and this is one that I'm going to kind of show you a little detail work on as we go along. But your size matters, so you know that's what's going to happen there. So switch me back to the PowerPoint for a second. And handle the bark carefully, and when you're carving it, you have to remember that the way cottonwood bark grows is in layers, and it will flake off. So one thing that you want to have handy, and I keep it handy by where I'm carving, is your instant glue or your cryo glue and your activator, so that you can glue the piece back on and you can keep going. And it's kind of prone to breaking off. So as you're carving along, you can anticipate it flaking, and I'll show you how to do that. Your bark that you haven't carved yet, or that you're working on and you're saving to carve later, I always save mine in a nice, cool, dry place and out of the light. So it stays in the shop or in a closed-in area where it's dry and cool.
Not outside.
Not outside. So that's how I store it. So, like I told you before, you can use your regular gouges. Some of your, if you do a lot of intricate work, you'll be able to use your smaller tools. I define some of my work by using wood burning, and I'll show you how I accent some of it with that. Your knives, a good carving, whittling knife, nice, sharp, durable knife was really good. Now, I don't know if you all are familiar with ad axes, but I'm going to show you how those they're adze axe. But I find that that's the fastest way for me to remove that bark in areas where I don't want bark to be, and I'm going to do most carving. Or you can use a draw knife, and it's useful to remove the outside bark, and I'll show you how that works as well. Power tools, like I said, I use them for sanding, I use them for carving deep areas. I keep my instant glue and my accelerator handy, and that's kind of it. The polishing and the sanding a lot of that is done by hand. Let's see. So you want to pay attention to your detail work, and you want to take your time as you're going along, and you sometimes you actually need to magnify it. So you know, I have a loop magnifier that I can bring over my carving if I'm doing really fine detail work. It's the same one that I use when I'm doing my wood turning, and I'm doing I kind of specialize in basket illusion. So when I'm doing my basket illusion, I use the same type of magnifying system. So so there's, you know, like we said before, there's, you know, wood spirits, there's Cahisha dolls, which are predominantly Native American art dolls. Owls are fairly popular. There's a really beneficial book that's by Vic Hood and Jack Williams, and it'll be at the end of the...
You want to show it?
Yeah, let's show that book here. So this is a carving found wood, and there's a section back here by Rick Jensen that goes into carving the architectural, I call them the architectural pieces. And I kind of lean in that direction because I had a lot of training as an engineer, so and building, so I kind of lean towards the building things and the gnome homes. But this is an excellent reference for carving faces as well as as well as the architectural carvings. We'll give you for the carving, and those we put those at the end of the PowerPoint so we can get that in there. So regardless of the subject matter, Cottonwood carving requires patience, skill, and attention to detail. It's important to choose the right tools, including a good quality carving knife and chisels. And it's important to take the time to properly sand and finish your piece so that it displays well and you're proud of it when you're all done. So these are your references and useful links. I encourage you to look those up and look at them, because there's a lot of really good stuff in there for carving the bark.
And I'll just say, when you pre-registered, we have your email, so one of the reasons we asked to pre-register so we can send things out. So you'll get a PDF of the PowerPoint slides with these references.
Yeah.
And the photos that Betty had.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, Roger's gonna reposition my camera here, so we get down to the actual piece that we're working on. So there's a couple of things that you want to have handy on your carving bench. Now this is a carving station that I made for myself, and it's kind of got two little legs that puts it at a slant. I've got a piece of leather glued to the bottom so I can sharpen or hone my tools as I go. If I get them a little dull, I just hone them right here. Other things you want to keep handy are things like Band-Aids, and you want to make sure you're wearing a glove. And I'll use my thumb guard if I'm using my knife, but I don't put it on unless I'm using my knife. Now when you start, we're going to start by removing bark off of this piece. Now I've got it firmly up against my board here, and I've got it clamped to the table. Now, if nobody's ever seen an ad-axe, this is what an ad-axe is. And it's got a flat end and it's got a curved end. And what I usually do is I get a standing approach to this. And so, since this piece, I've got a flat end on this piece, and a lot of times I'll take and I'll plane off the bottom so it's flat. Or I'll take it to the belt sander and I'll put a belt sander on it and plane the back so that it's flattened out. And that way, if you want to hang the piece, you can hang your piece. Or if you want to actually, some people take flatten out two pieces and put them together so they can make a cohesive piece. But to get your bark off, you just kind of take a brute force attack on it, and you just see how it flakes. That's not unusual. That's okay, by the way. I got it. So I'm going to just switch sides here and go this way with it. That's why you need your glove.
If you didn't have an adze,
If you didn't have an
what would you
ad-axe
use? or a draw knife, what would
or
you
a
use?
draw knife, here's what we go to. So what I go to is just a regular flex cut carving tool, and I'll just take it and just take it down.
Betty, it's all bark, so how do you know when to stop?
So, how I know when to stop is when I see an area that I want to carve detail into, and this is what I'm doing right here, is I'm making a decision as I go to leave this covered with bark, and then I think that I would probably integrate some architectural work up in here, like roof work, roof lines, or something like that. But I will probably remove the bark from both sides and leave some of it down here raw, what I call raw, so that I can get it done. But now, when you actually get down to wanting to smooth this out.
Can you show them the draw knife? Someone's
Oh,
asking.
let's do the draw knife, okay. So the draw knife is just like you would use a normal draw knife. You just want to and this is a more precise way to get it flat. So I think now that I got this flat, and as you go along when you're doing this removal, you're looking at the texture of your wood, and you can actually see how your grain's going. And the cottonwood bark has such beautiful grain, and I'm just going to show you really quick how pretty that. Roger's going to give us a close-up here. But I'm just putting a little beeswax on here just to show you how pretty this grain is. Can you all see that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. So as you're removing bark, you're going to look at the areas that you're going to use as your finished pieces and say, okay, so I might want to put doors or windows, or make it architectural, or make it an animal, or whatever. But the draw knife really is good to get your areas nice and flat and ready to carve. And I like to take and get a little bit of the side stuff off so I can have some rounding areas. And I will work, I'm just going to work with this for a little while because I want to be able to show you some of the other methods. But this is what's involved in getting your piece prepped and ready to go.
Is the grain nicely parallel?
It's usually parallel, but what happens with cottonwood bark is as it grows, I can stand here and do this all night long, but as it grows, it kind of twists. So your grain is going to kind of be a little twisty as you're going along. And you'll see that when I start carving on a smaller piece, you'll see how I have to watch how the grain goes so that I know which direction to go with my carving. I'm going to set this one aside, this roughed out piece aside, and I'm going to get one of the smaller pieces and show you how I'm doing some of the detail work. How are we doing on time, Larry?
They're fine.
We're good?
Plenty good.
So I'm going to set that one back there. I've already got my brain working on what I'm going to do there. So when I get down to actually trying to figure out what I'm going to carve on the piece, like on this piece I've got a section out here that I'm going to put windows and doors in. This part is going to be the roof. And what I've done here is I've gone to the bandsaw, and I sawed off kind of an angled type roof area that I'm going to use for shingles. And I'll put shingles up there. And then this will be kind of like the fascia board that comes around the top of the shingles. This area in here will likely be some brick area or some shingle area, and then I'll put another door, and I may put like a ladder coming down this back side over here. So as you can see here, I've started some boulders drawn in, and I'm going to show you how to start those boulders, and then we're going to work our way up this piece. But I use these little white pencils to kind of draw out the areas that I'm wanting to carve out, so I can kind of keep myself, well, when you have a pencil that has got a point on it. Larry's going to fix me up there. So when I start carving this, I'll use just one of my flex tools. And as you can see here, I've gone and put my detail in here, and you want to go nice and easy when you get down in here. And sometimes you're going to use your smaller tools, or you're going to just stick with these. Like I use this skew chisel a lot. I'm very comfortable with it, especially with these carvings. So you kind of want to back cut your area that your rock's going to be. So you want to define that area first. And these ones on the bottom are going to stick out more than the ones on the top. So then I come back and I just, nice and easy, come to that stop point and make another one as I get deeper. But you see how easy this carves. It's just really nice carving material. But I'm going to show you something here in a second. I'll make a deliberate mistake for you. But you see how this flakes. So that's the reason why I do the back cuts. Because if I go in there and just try to carve out that rock without the back cuts, I'm going to flake all the way over. So I just come through there and I get those definitions in there. So this will be my first pass on these. I'll come back and do some more defining later. But this is kind of my first pass. And again, I'm doing my defining cut here. And on any detail that you do on these architectural type pieces, you're going to do this back cutting a lot, because the way this bark behaves when you carve it, if you don't watch your back cutting or your grain, you're going to be frustrated. Like right there. Any questions so far from anyone? There's not.
Watching chat. Sorry. Are you watching chat? I am, just sort of looking at it. A few comments about the question was, is that a magnetic strip on the side holding your gouges?
It absolutely is. And it's quite convenient.
As Roger says, when the camera is on her, there is echo, but when it's on the PowerPoint, there's no echo. Yeah. We'd be fine now. You can just ask them if the audio is okay.
Is the other okay? You guys hearing me?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Larry, is there a Donna out there watching?
Say again.
Is there a Donna out there watching, Larry?
Is there a Donna on is there a Donna in the participants? I can check. Can't show.
Can't tell. That's all right.
Yeah, well, we have a pause here. I'll just point out Jeff Osborne was asking the question, but Jeff has not been widely introduced, but he's our librarian, and we're just in the process of cataloging and labeling all of the books we have. 4 years ago, we started with nothing, and now we have 500 books,
Oh boy.
which is good news, bad news. So we created this concept of where do we put them? And so the answer is we're going to put them 10 books each in the hands of members, and you get to choose what's called a micro distributed library. And so we're maybe a month or two from being able to have that fully functional, but we have all the books have been indexed on the on an Excel spreadsheet, and that's on the website. And then Jeff is busily working to label these things, and we'll start asking you to find your favorite books and take them home and keep them for a year. And if people want them, they'll know where to go. Betty, we got a question. What's your most popular knives to carve? He says he would use a V-gouge for stop cuts.
V-gouge, I do use the V-gouge when I'm doing my shingles and when I'm doing my bricks. I find that the skew gouge is easier to do my rocks with because I've got more versatility with it, and I can get some detail in there. But if I switch to my V-gouge, you kind of have to wiggle it along there.
And Jeff also asked, could you hold up that knife up so we can see it? I'm not familiar with it. I think he's talking about your skew.
This is my skew knife here. Let's see.
So it's a put it over the wood. It's the number one skew, about 10 millimeters, maybe 3/8 of an inch.
Yeah, and it's well used.
Okay.
Okay, and then the V-gouge, we know what those look like.
Just observe, I think, Betty, one advantage of using the skew is you don't have to pick up and put down a tool. You're able to do the stop cuts.
Yeah, I can do the stop cuts and the defining with one tool. And that's one reason I like the skew so much with this.
Since Roger teaches a monthly sharpening class, I would say it's also a whole lot easier to sharpen the skew than it is the V-tool.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But you see, I've got my little.
Can you feel grit in the bark at all? Do you feel sand or dirt or as you're carving?
I've read about people finding sand and dirt in them. I don't find much sand and dirt in the ones that I carve. You know, the outside bark is inherently dirty, and And it may have more sand in it than I think, but most of that gets on the shop floor. So, I don't see it as often. The one thing, if you're doing, when I show you the power carving, when you're doing the power carving on this makes a really fine dust, fine particulate dust. So you really want to make sure you wear your N95 or your mask with your ventilation on it. I have a peak hood that I use at home. It gives me the best. I'm going to use the V tool down here a little bit. It gives me the best type of protection for my lungs, um, which
In our club, Terry Burnside is also a bark carver, and he's in Italy for a vacation and is not able to participate in the meeting tonight, but I videotaped him with about a 35-minute conversation with all of his experience, which is highly overlap with what Betty is saying. I'll post that video and you can watch it. I think it's worth watching to get his perspective. It was either he or um, Bob Curtis in Salem, who also a serious bark carver, um, said that a lot of the cottonwood bark is all harvested from down trees, which tends to lay on the ground a lot for a long time, and the climates are in the dust and dirt blows the sand and the dirt into the bark itself until when you get it, that's the reality.
so what I'm doing here is that using the V gouge, I was losing my definition of rocks, and they're turning out more square than round. So I'm going to go back and redefine that. You keep me on my time schedule there, Larry.
Yeah, you got about half an hour.
Okay. So this part here is where I think that I will probably put some bricks into here and then make an outline piece right in here to make a little door type opening here and then surround it with bricks. And I'm just roughly putting this on here where I want the bricks to be so that I don't carve into them. And I usually kind of come through because there's some of them that I'll do just kind of whimsical rather than being a rigid straight line, kind of a curved whimsical type design on the bricks. So we'll outline, let's do this first. Let's outline these brick areas. And I don't know, are you able to see that pretty good, Roger?
A little dark.
It's a little dark. So I'm going to come through here and I'm going to, these lines I just drew on here, I'm going to bring these right up to that door opening. And I think I'm going to sort of like this with a little more light. So these areas here that I'm carving are some of the same areas that I take and come back with my power tool and define these a little better. Oh, there we go. Now we got light. I'm kind of watching my grain here, and as you can see, you get pieces that kind of want to flake. So you want to kind of watch where you're carving. We got any questions over there, Roger?
Question was, did you make the outline a regular colored pencil?
You can do it in a regular color pencil. I use the white because it shows up better and I don't rub it off as easy. Larry's getting me set up with lighting here. And this is the bottom of my door, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that out.
You made the decision to use hand tools at this point. Would there ever be a place where you'd use power tools at this point?
At this point, yes, I could. I could come back through and I could easily get these cut out with power tool. I like to teach how to do it with the hand tools because a lot of people aren't comfortable with the power tools or with the power carving. But the hand tools are very reliable and you know you can do all your defining with them. I save my power tools for if I've got a lot of stuff to remove, and I'm going to show you where I'm going to use that, or if I've got fine definition and this will require some fine definition when I'm done. So I start my brick pattern kind of up here, and so here's where you're gonna see. So now I'm going with the grain here. It carves real easy with the grain. So I'm gonna march these over. You won't be able to see this side yet, but I'm gonna march these over and then come back and stagger my bricks. So I'm going to show you just one little piece here while we're on this section of how I use my burner to define some of this. So I use a regular skew burner on this, on my wood burning tool. And I just come back through and I can burn these lines in and just really clearly define them. And you can actually carve with this chisel and burn the lines in. But I'll do that usually as a finishing type step. I'll go back and I'll burn the lines that I want to burn, but I wanted to show you there where I use it. So you go through and you march these bricks down. So you can get a piece going, like a small piece like this, you can get a piece going pretty quick and, you know, do all your definitions after you get your roughing done. See where my lines are here.
Wood looks a little punky in that area.
Yeah, it is a little punky in this area right here, and that's one of the inherent things with this bark And you can use it to your advantage sometimes. And if I get a really punky area, sometimes I'll hollow it out and make something out of it.
Do you ever attempt to harden it?
I haven't. Um, except on the areas where I goof up and I end up using the super glue on it. That usually ends up being a real stable piece. So then I'm going to come down the rest of the way with this door. So I'll finish that off with the bricks. And then what I'll do is, let's see, I didn't bring this one up. Watch how you catch your tools, by the way. So all you more experienced bark carvers out there that are watching me, just email me and tell me all the mistakes I made. Because I'm learning and I'm teaching tonight, but I learn every time I do something. No matter whether it's turning a bowl or carving bark, you learn. I think once you quit learning, then you better quit doing what you're doing. So this area here, I'm going to take and I'm going to flatten this area out and make this a door.
The question was, did you ever use a mallet on bark carving?
Usually only when I'm doing bark removal in the very beginning, I'll use a mallet. I hardly ever have to use a mallet. That's the time that I primarily use a mallet is when I'm removing bark. But right here, I'm using a flatter broad chisel to flatten this out some. You see how this is flaking off? So that's one of the things about cottonwood that can get you into trouble if you're not careful, is that flaking. You can get if you get this little, you see this little rocking motion that I'm doing, just as I can kind of get that grain to pop off a little easier if I rock the tool a little bit. How are we doing on time?
Okay, it's about 17 after.
After 8?
You good? Yeah, after 8.
Okay. I want to be able to show them the power.
Also shoot for
On the back of these carvings, like I mentioned earlier, that sometimes I'll run them. I'll run them on the planer, or I'll put them on the belt sander and just flatten the back. You can also, if you're steady enough with your bandsaw, you can flatten the back, but I don't like to do it like that. But you can see how this peels on the back. So this is kind of what you deal with on the back of these pieces. Now, on some of the pieces, like on the ones that I showed you the pictures of earlier, I actually carved through the back so that I could make window openings and get lights into places where I wanted to put them. So it is common to see carvings that have the backs open up so that you can see straight through the carving. And I like to flatten the back so that if someone wants to hang it on the wall, they can hang it on the wall. Or I can mount it to a board and present it like that. So,
Is it too dangerous to use a jointer if you want to flatten the back?
you know, I wouldn't use a joiner. It it probably would work fine, but I think either the hand planer, I'll usually mount it so that it's, I'll clamp it down so that it's not going to move. And then I'll take the hand planer and go over it a couple of times and I can get the back flat and just short order.
How deep will you go at this stage? You trying to go a quarter inch?
This stage here, I'll probably actually take this in about a ½ inch. I'm not going to get it all done tonight, but I just want to show you how to get down in there. So you can carve deep into a piece. Just be mindful of where you're going to stop and put your stop cuts in so that you don't ruin what you've already carved by running into your stop cuts.
So unless there are voids or problems, this consistency will be all the way
The
through.
consistency is very good. Occasionally you'll get a piece that you have a real, kind of hard area to get to. This piece could actually, this nub on the side here, if I'm not careful when I'm carving this nub, it could actually break off.
If it does break off, what would you do?
Super glue.
You
Because,
wouldn't dowel it or need to do anything?
you could, but super glue will hold it. You could use tight bond glue on it, put a clamp on it, and that would hold it even longer. The ones that I put together, those big pieces that I joined together, I do join those with dowels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop on this one. I want to show you this little piece that I've been working on. And this shows where I've put my rocks in. I've made some openings, some little doors. I've got a little set of stairs coming down the side. More bricks here. This is a very rough carving. This is nowhere near finished. I've got some whimsical things going here. I think I'm probably going to put a chimney right there. This I'm going to leave raw. And then I'll just define these out better. Maybe put some little critters in it and whatever. And make it a little gnome home mounted on a board. Now this is what the back looks like on this particular piece. I did not do any of this. This is how it came. So you can see that you're going to get pieces like this. Now, what I can do is I can come through with this little door and make it go all the way through and I can get a light in there. Same thing with this little door here or these little windows. Your imagination can take you anywhere you want it to with this bark. So you can really get a lot of detail, or you can do a lot of rough carving. The faces, like I said, I am not a good face carver. I might have brought one with me, but I might have kept it at home just because I'm embarrassed. Skip this big piece here. I want to show you, since we're coming down on our time, this is a piece that this is the larger piece that I've been working on carving, and this is going to be an owl, and this is kind of my my starting point. It won't look as good as this picture, but I'm gonna try.
Okay, that's good.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's kind of my starting point on my owl.
That looks like a coloring book. Is that a source?
It came out of a coloring book, and I just what I to get it on the bark, I use a transfer paper. Um, let's see, there's a gourd carving site that I go to, and it has transfer paper that you can just run through your printer, and it copies it onto the transfer paper. You peel it off and you stick it on the bark, and then I go through and I burn through the carving paper, and that gives me my pattern on my bark, and that gives me my starting point anyway. And since eyeballs are my hardest part, those are going to be done last. Okay, so we won't be doing eyeballs tonight. I don't want to embarrass myself. So we're going to do a little power carving here, and I'm gonna,
Reach your.
yeah, I just have to see where I did with my mask. So those of you with respiratory problems, or if you just general safety, is when you're power carving, you wear a mask. Thank you. So you probably won't be able to hear me because of the noise of the power carver, but we're going to try here. Let's see. So this back part, this is a Kutzall uh, ball tip cutter, and they're aggressive. They're great cutters, and I really like them. I've got I've got a larger ball, and I've got a spear, and then I've got two more of the. This one here is a rotary burr, and it's a 1/8 inch shaft, and it's an extreme cutter. It really moves material fast. And this one, I do a lot of detail work. I can get a lot of fine detail work out of this. This is a fine, and this is coarse. So
So you got a fine taper and a cylinder, very coarse.
very coarse. And are called, this is called a flame burr, and this one is a taper rotary burr. These are not Kutzall, but they're different brands, so we're going to see how they work. So I want to get this into more of a three-dimensional. So you see how fast I can get the bark off with this. So those of you that are afraid of the dentist won't like this part. I'm always accused of being in the dental office. I keep my little brush around. It's just a short taper brush. I keep it around to get things dusted off. But you see, I can get my depth in here. Yeah, have that time.
But you still want to watch your grain pattern as you're power carving because you still can get flaking. Although not quite as much when you're doing the power carving as you do with the knives. So in order to get this more three-dimensional, I'm gonna power carve all the way back, and I'm gonna take this probably back another inch so that I can get more of a three-dimensional look of this owl on this board. And I've got that's gonna come across here. I've got his little claws that are gonna come in there, and then I'll work on defining the feathers. And hopefully I'll learn something at that carving demo at the end of the month, or maybe at Rockland tomorrow, uh, to see some of the feather work, and that might be beneficial for me. But you can see that take a lot of material off in a short amount of time. Take a lot of material off in a short amount of time, and you can get to what you're doing faster.
Can't you do the same thing with Dremel?
You can do the same thing with the Dremel. You don't have to use a rotary carver at all. A Dremel will work just fine. I have a Dremel. I've got a micro carver. I've got a Proxon carver. I've got 3 different ones I use.
So the wood is pretty soft, so you don't really need a powerful motor to be.
You don't need a powerful motor to do it. You can do it with a Dremel easily. And you know, I use a lot of very fine tips, or I'll use the 8-inch aggressive tips, and you can do a lot of different things with them. The bark itself that it gives with your carving. You've got a lot of flexibility with your ability to carve. You can carve with straight knives. The big thing about carving bark is having sharp knives, and I have my nice, very sharp knife that does a really good job. And you can get a lot of nice fine detail with these, just a regular knife
With no sawdust.
with no sawdust.
While you're whittling, I'll make a point. We're starting a introduction to power carving class. That the first one will be in November, and the Covered Birds project uses a lot of rotary tools. Eileen Argentina discovered the Dremel Stylo, which is a $55 rotary tool that's got a simple cord on it. Harbor Freight makes an identical one for $35, which is this guy in a box, and this is the one we're going to be using in the class.
Is that?
We get these. I got these for $20.
Oh,
If you spend the $30 and become a member for a year. So the club just bought 8 of them.
is that an electric?
It's electric, so
Yeah.
it's not a battery.
No good.
So it doesn't have the torque of a bigger motor, but it would be sufficient for detailing or for comfort birds and basswood and softwood.
Right,
And we'll be doing a comfort bird in a class using hardwoods.
right.
But you don't have to spend $200, $250 to buy a micro motor,
No,
where you can basically get
the same thing.
90% of the way there for
Exactly.
50 or less. So
Exactly. Or if you've got a Dremel at home and you just, you buy the burrs that you need to do what you want to do with it. I mean,
burrs are $10, $15.
yeah, the burrs are not expensive. When you get into the Kutzall burrs, some of them can be a little more spendy, but they will last forever. So
There's just a comment that nobody could hear Mark couldn't hear the motor.
They couldn't hear the
Hear the
motor.
motor, so
Oh.
it's either high pitch or away from your microphone, one or the other.
Good. It's actually a quieter motor than what I have at home, but it's good that you couldn't hear it. But I wanted to make the point of that you can do a lot of your carving with just knives and just simple gouges. You don't need a lot of equipment or a lot of carving tools to carve cottonwood bark. You're just going to use your basic tools, and you can get into fancier tools or tools with different purposes to them. I have some that are just curved tools. I don't know what they're called. But I can just do little curves out of them, and I've got one with me. But
Like a spoon carver.
yeah, like a spoon carver. Um, of course, I'll cut myself getting it out of the bag. Well, this is similar to what I'm talking about. You can use these to get some of your detail in, but I've got the little tiny spoon carvers that
Show that again. Just hold it still. Yeah.
so this one's got a nice little curve on it. So I could actually get down into here and do some of this rough out with this instead of the power carver. But I would have to really watch my grain and my stop lines. So that's why I use a power carver to get that depth, because it's easier on my hands and it's faster. So you're going to use your power carver in areas where you're going to get you want fine detail, or you want to get more depth, so that you've got the definition of your piece pops out at you, so you're not like drawing a flat piece. You've got a fully defined three-dimensional piece. So I hope that you can take away a little bit of what I've taught you tonight about cottonwood bark. It's a fun carving material. It's not hard to get. It's plentiful. You've got, rather than having square blanks, you've got a completely odd shaped piece of material that you're trying to make a really good piece out of it, so that you can be proud of it when you're done. But you're gonna enjoy carving it, because it's a nice, easy wood to carve, and it's not one of those woods that you're going to have to really dig at or use your mallet a lot. I use my mallet maybe twice during the whole process, and the biggest part is getting areas flat or getting areas debarked, so that I can have a nice surface like this to work on. There is every possibility that I give up on this owl and reflatten it and start over and make something different, because depending on how it looks as I go along, if I don't like the way it looks, I just stop and start over, and there it's versatile, and it gives you opportunities that if you make a mistake, you can usually fix it or work it into your pattern. But cottonwood bark is not to be afraid of. Now, I will tell you, if you want to, when you're doing your power carving, I failed to mention, save some of your fine dust, because if you get an area where you've broken a piece off and you want to fill a crack, you can just put a little glue, put this little fine dust in there and put a little hot glue on it, and or not hot glue, but instant glue on it, and fill your voids in with that. So I save a little of my bark dust when I'm power carving, so that I can get my oopsies filled in.
We've got a comment that thanks much. Got Mark and Tom at the summer picnic, and we did leave some knowledge and encouragement to do something.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. That's nice. So,
I'll also make a point that the guy that found Tom Rich at the East Side Carving Gathering had more than a trunk load worth of bark, cottonwood bark that we gave away. Betty ended up with some. People at the picnic ended up with some. The club ended up with some. And so if you want to try it, we have some free cottonwood bark.
there you
It's not
go.
always free. It turns out to be fairly expensive when you buy it.
When you buy it, it can get spendy, but I've gotten lucky on a couple times. And, I poured some more from Larry here, and I'm pretty set for a while.
Yeah, one of the ideas for the carving SIGs after the holidays is that we'll do a session on cottonwood bark. We'll cut the pieces we have up into smaller pieces and let people play around. So that would be an option.
Any other questions for me?
Simple comment, just saying thanks, great presentation, good class.
Glad to hear it.
This kind of falls in the category of carving found wood.
It really does,
It's
and
sort of-
that's the name of this book that we showed you earlier was The Carving Found Wood. And it starts out with driftwood that you found. This particular book has a lot of facial stuff that I just am not perfected it yet. When I learn symmetry, I guess I will, but that's where I have my problems. So you can see where they've used color and stain, and this is all cottonwood bark. So you've really got a versatile piece of wood that you can really make a lot of nice things out of. And this book I really like because of this section by Rick Jensen of the architectural, and you see how the back of some of these are carved out so that he can get light through, and he carved through the back to get the openings through. But
Another
this
question was, instead of cedar had bark, do you think you can use that for?
I've never tried. Are you talking about the aromatic cedar?
Just incense.
Incense cedar? I love aromatic cedar. I haven't carved it because I'm allergic to cedar.
Okay.
So-
In general.
In general, you could try it. You could definitely try it. In fact, about it, you can try any piece that's got bark on it.
The general rule that I've heard is that bark from northern climates is better than from
Southern climate.
southern or midwestern climates. So the farther north you go, the sturdier it is.
The farther northeast you go, the sturdier it is, because I think the climate in like the Pacific Northwest and some of the western states, you have a lot of really good wood here, but the cottonwood bark, I haven't seen any from the western states. I know we have a cottonwood tree across the street from us that plagues us every year, but it's I haven't gone over there to look at the bark on that particular tree, but most of the stuff that I order online, and now I've got another source for it.
And where does it come from when you order online?
No, I have forgotten the name.
Canada, though?
It's usually Canadian. Yes.
Bob Curtis in Salem, when I asked him that question, where he gets it, he orders it from northern British Columbia.
Yeah.
And he gets it in 50-pound boxes and it advertises the weight.
Yeah. The shipping weight, and they'll tell you that there's varied sizes of the bark, and like I've shown you, some of this bark came like these pieces here. This was the size of the bark. This was what I had. All I did was cut the tail end off of it so it would sit flat.
the other source is, one of the carving shows around. Randy Moore is known to many carvers. Randy's, in northern Minnesota. He brings a trailer load of wood, basswood and cottonwood bark out to the shows. He was here in September.
Oh,
He will be in Lincoln City in January. And he was, I think he was in Salem. But sometimes when he shows up, he will bring it. So you could buy it locally, pick the pieces that you want
oh, cool.
and pay for it. And you
Yeah.
pay a good price for it.
Yeah,
Still, it's reasonably priced, but
so
still,
it's reasonable, but I mean, it does, you can find it fairly expensive, but you can get lucky sometimes and find somebody that's selling it a little cheaper.
okay. Any other questions there, Roger?
No, just another couple of thanks, Betty.
Okay,
Great job.
This is final call. So thank you all.
thank you all for,
registering. Thanks.
thanks for listening to me and, bearing with me as I jumped from project to project, but I wanted to show you areas that you can work in and methods that you can use and the tools that you can use. Like I said, you can start with a very basic set of tools and a piece of cottonwood bark and see what happens.
A whimsy in your mind.
And the whimsy in your mind, whatever comes out.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll pull the plug. Good night, everybody. So, we're lucky tonight to have Betty Simnett be part of